We are live. Welcome back to the Awakening Summit. I am so excited to have Michelle Aspinwall, the Age Alchemist, with me today. My name is Leonie Laukkanen. I'm an intuitive mentor, author, well-being warrior, mama of 3 children, and I'm excited to be here today with Michelle. Michelle is a integrative body biohacker, 2-time international best-selling author, and an age alchemist. Those words are amazing. And she works with women to age timelessly through hormone mastery, combining both cutting-edge Western science like intermittent fasting and specialized testing with traditional Eastern healing like plant medicine and the 5 elements. And Michelle guides women to use their power, learning how to work with their body, seeing this harmony through perimenopause, which is where I probably am right now, and many of you listening, and beyond. So this is the aging process, and this portal spans well beyond conventional beauty into vitality and longevity. Well, I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah, I loved your chapter. And something that stood out for me was kind of like smacked me in the face, actually. It was like, what you do in your 40s and 50s absolutely depicts your health in your 60s and 70s. And my uncle, who I love very much, passed this week.
I'm so sorry.
And it's okay, it happens. And it really made me reflect on that, So I would love you to share the chapter you wrote in Awakening and how that's evolved into your offerings now.
That's a great question. So my chapter, although it is just one element of the whole picture, is essentially on intermittent fasting or timed eating. And it's one of the greatest tools that we as women have. And the purpose of intermittent fasting, which the name really doesn't do it justice, because when one does intermittent fasting with intention and purpose, it's actually more about intermittent eating, rather than intermittent fasting. And it's just describing the thing you don't do rather than the thing you do. And I think most women see or hear the word fast and it gives them flutters and makes them a bit nervous. But the reality is that when you learn how to eat for your constitution and learn how to strategically combine the right foods for your stage in life, as well as giving your body a rest from digestion, you actually activate a whole new level of healing and cellular reserve and cellular clean out that is essential for brain health. And one of the things that I'm really tapping into lately is women's brains as they age. We are twice as likely to experience dementia or inflammatory brain diseases. And I'm unavailable for that. I don't know about the rest of you, but I would venture to guess my practice on it that there's not a single woman out here who is not interested in maintaining their brain as much as possible and minimizing the shrinkage that does happen around 42 is when it begins.
Yes, I can testament to that. And I think it also, when you have children, your brain shrinks apparently. So I've had 3, so I'm I'm on the downhill slope, right? I'm 44 next month and I've had 3 kids, and I really notice it. So what is intermittent fasting? Like, I don't know really what that means, right? I understand there's a period of time where you may not consume food, but like, what is the definition of intermittent fasting?
So we all know what the word fast means. Every major religion in the world has some fundamental fasting practice, whether it's for a day, a month, around a specific holiday. And it all has to do with allowing the body to rest, and then an inner reflection, if you will, to whatever the purpose of the fast is. In Western culture, we don't tend to participate in this. It's not a part of our daily life, except for it's become very savvy in the weight loss sphere and also in the biohacking sphere, that you give your body a chance to rest, meaning you don't eat. And the easiest way and the most typical way to do it is to finish your dinner, whatever time you eat, say 7:30, and then give yourself at least 12 hours rest without eating anything with calories. And then you don't eat again for that entire 12 hours. Now, the term intermittent fasting is you're able to push that window, right? The fasting window. You can do a 12-hour fast, you could do a 14 or a 16. Then there's people who do, a fast one day and eat regular the next day. There's many different ways to do it. And it really depends on the benefit and what you're willing to ascertain and why you're doing it. I don't recommend everybody fast in a very particular kind of however you want to do it. There are steps and procedures and ways in which you need to support your body when you are eating. And that's essentially what my chapter is about, is how do women and women over 40, and particularly women closer to menopause, how do you support the body through diet and the wonders of the plant kingdom, so that you are supporting every cell and every cell receptor. And that's how our hormones, enter our cells and are utilized in our cells and through our body. And that's essentially what we want at this stage of life, because we're at no shortage of hormones in perimenopause. It's post-menopause that our hormones actually start to diminish, and we see the intense symptoms. Right now, what we need to do in this decade that seems to last a lifetime, if you ask me, I'm closer to 50 than 40. And certainly I'll be 49 in a couple of months. And certainly this has been a decade that I've nourished my bones, nourished my blood, nourished my organs and my heart by eating specific combinations of food. And then at the same time, giving my body a very distinct rest from digestion. Digestion, it requires a lot of calories. Aside from our brains, which also use a lot of energy, a lot of calories, those two actions, and interestingly, they're connected through the vagus nerve, these two organs, they use a lot of our energy. And when we give our bodies that rest or that break from fasting, we're actually allowing the body to go in and to clean out all the dead and deteriorating cells, the precancerous, the pre-autoimmune cells, and then we age. The aging process is slower. It's more gradual. It's more deliberate. We maintain very strong, more strong bodies because we're a leaner mass. You can't actually eat as many calories as you're eating when you limit your eating window. So it's not really necessarily about restricting calories. I don't restrict calories when I fast, but I am very intentional in how I combine food. And this is one of the elements that I teach in Feeding Over 40. For women, I show them how to do this. And it's a very distinct process. And there's not a woman who's gone through the program who doesn't really understand and have a deeper connection with their body.
Wow. So I mean, there's a comment on Facebook, fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating. So intermittent fasting is one way, right, to support our hormonal health. What are some of the other ways? Because you said that intermittent fasting was kind of one way that you can support your clients. What are some of the other ways that you support them?
So before I answer that question, what I'd really love to do is is comment on the concept of aging, because I think as women, we associate aging and beauty. And one of my biggest messages to women, not only privately, but collectively, is to try to disassociate the aging process from beauty or the maintenance of youthful look, because they are in and of themselves two very different elements in terms of identifying and that connection with the body. But the irony is that when you actually care for the various organs, both energetically, nutritionally, spiritually, and through movement, obviously, you actually age slower. And by
Wow.
doing that, you actually utilize the hormones that we are still making, and we do make hormones for the rest of our lives. It's just it's not so intense and not as readily available because of course our ovaries stop producing estrogen. They produce a little bit, but mostly it's our adrenal glands and our fat, a little bit of breast tissue too. And the essential part of that, and the interesting thing about the aging process, especially through perimenopause, which is this time, just to define it for everybody out there, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of this, but just in case, perimenopause are those years leading up to menopause when you still have a cycle, regular or otherwise. And then menopause is the one day where you have not had your regular bleeding cycle for an entire 12 months, consecutive 12 months. And then everything after that is postmenopause. And then you are postmenopausal until, you take your last breath. So perimenopause is this time where we have, at any given moment, we have a surge of hormones, or our hormones are shifting. Some things are skyrocketing, other things are going down, and then some things are sort of erratic, right? And it's essential during this stage of life, because we do still have our hormones, and because these hormones are actually, it's intense for the body. This moment in time has an intensity to it. And that's what we feel when we feel the symptoms of perimenopause, right? And some of those symptoms, just to go over them, I mean, they're not so fun, but they're necessary. Sometimes women flood. Sometimes women feel bouts of depression, bouts of rage, a feeling like you want to sort of run to the forest and commune with other women who get it, wanting to be by yourself, pulling away from your family, potentially pulling away from your life partner. Again, your cycle becomes irregular. And for a lot of women, there's a mourning process to this time, because we are losing our ability to have children, to bear and sustain life in our womb. And that energy, that kundalini really has to go somewhere. And I think a lot of what we have traditionally misunderstood about some of the really intense, like menopausal and postmenopausal symptoms, like hot flashes and night sweats, is that energy is actually meant to travel upward. And we as women are not used to energy traveling up. Our energy thus far has always sort of, it's been a downward push, a downward flow, whether it be, through excretion, whether it be through our menses, whether it be through childbirth. That energy is a very downward shift. And the beauty of this portal that we're crossing through into our wisest, most present years of our life, if we so choose and accept that realization and not fight it, is we actually close one of the gates of that energy. And so the energy comes up and flows through each of the energy channels, right? The chakra system. And where it gets stuck, and this is the really interesting point that I love sort of working with women. You asked me that question, like, how do I help women with this, with their hormones in this stage, is really helping women to understand those pangs and those feelings is an energetic sort of muck. It's a place where the energy gets sort of stagnant and can't continue upward. And that's a lot of times what we feel with the flashes and the sweats and the intensity of our moods and our personality. And we're not broken. There's nothing wrong with us. This is a natural stage of life. And it's interesting because our mothers, the Generation X mothers, the mothers of Generation X children, they were sort of the guinea pigs, if you will, like hormone replacement therapy and the birth control pill. Those were new feminist phenomenon for women, and they were incredible and liberated a lot of women, except for the fact that now we're this sort of lost generation that hasn't had that real traditional wisdom of our mothers and our elders to help us, guide us through this process. So we're kind of figuring it out. And I don't know about Australia, but I know that in America, there's something like 80 million women going through perimenopause at this moment in time, and possibly more. That was like a number that I read, but it's a phenomenal amount of women all experiencing some version of this at some given time. And the really, in America, obviously, I'm sure it's a little bit different in Australia. In America, it's not a medical condition. We don't know what to do with these feelings. We don't know And so we turn to our doctors, and unfortunately, because it's not a medical condition, they're not always equipped to help us through and to sort of help us understand this process. And one of the greatest things I can say to women at this stage is to find your people and hold them close and commune together so that together we collectively help ourselves through this.
Well, I resonate so deeply with everything you're saying. You know, the doctor, the GP looks at the physical, right? It doesn't look at the energetic. And I really understand the chakras and the energy rising, and the kind of enlightenment of knowing you're not losing your mind. And this is a natural process. But I would love to know more, like, how do we find our tribe, right? How do we go out there? Like, many of us are probably connected in lots of different circles, but to find women who are going through the same thing and are like, mindset seems to come up a lot, right? Defining what aging is, how we can age more gracefully, and changing our mindset around that. Like, it's not negative.
No,
right?
It's not.
Part of life, and we can all age gracefully and beautifully if we choose to do so. And so I love this concept of being surrounded by other women, right? So how do we go out there and find the women who are going through the same thing and have these open, beautiful conversations?
Isn't that the $65 million question? I mean, the thing I would say is to start with the 37 women in this summit, because in some form or another, we're all doing this work, even though it may not be categorized as hormonal, perimenopausal, moving through this portal. I mean, that's how I frame it. That's the lens by which I'm sort of doing the work that I'm doing now. And hormone mastery is not, what it isn't is a numbing of the situation. It isn't trying to feel like I felt when I was 30. And consequently, I feel better now at almost 49 than I did at 30. That was one of the sickest times of my life. And it's what brought me to understanding the body from a physiological level. And it wasn't really until I turned 42 and there was this magical moment that I realized, oh, okay, there's more to life than just, ticking this box, that box, and the other box. And it's through this. And I think that just, by having the conversation, by opening up, by recognizing we're not broken, our monthly cycles, the moon cycles, the way we communicate is so much broader than, what we own and what our children are doing and the vacations we're taking. Like, the real conversation lies behind that kind of facade of, this is who we are and this is what we own kind of deal. But I definitely would say starting here with the beautiful 37 souls in awakening.
Yeah, there's so much knowledge and wisdom, and I agree. We're all really supporting each other.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're offering, and there is so much wisdom. Are there practices? Are there things we can do in our daily life? Obviously, the food element is one thing. The fasting is one thing. The kind of having that awareness of what's happening hormonally. But what are some of the key things we can do for women in their 40s heading into their 50s to be really mindful of?
Sure.
That's something. I've just done a 7-day detox, which was amazing, and I'm really mindful now around what I'm consuming. Mm-hmm. And how can, the women who are in this phase of their life, make good choices that serve them instead of those habitual choices that don't really serve them?
So the first thing I would say, that's a fantastic question. The first thing I would say is really understanding that the body at this stage needs deep nourishment. So we talked about the connection part of it, and that would be the first thing I would say. The next thing I would say is nourishing the body on a level with the plant kingdom again. And there's I'm running a masterclass that I'll talk about at the end, but there are a particular group of herbs and foods and botanicals that really expertly and exquisitely support the female reproductive system, the nervous system, and all 7 chakras, not the full 12, but the 7 that really are in us, that really support us. And I would say really getting to know that process and those herbs, because these tonics and these nervines and adaptogens and phytoestrogens are essential, because when our body feels nourished, it's able to withstand more intense feelings, more intense symptoms, more intense traumas, or, there's deaths in the family, aging parents, children going off to college. These are all aspects of our lives that we have to sort of interact with. So when we support our bodies and nourish them with particular plants, and there are many, but I'm thinking of a specific 10. When we do that, then our bodies feel they can relax and relax into this process of change. And then when our bodies are relaxed, when our nervous system feels supported, we then have that guidance, that intuitive guidance that really helps us, right? It really sets us toward the path of least resistance, or the path that sort of guides us in the most profound way. That's the food or diet component. And just one more thing about the herbal situation, which is, when we think of herbs and botanicals and plants, it's not just actually, okay, I've got this one and that one and I combine that one. It's actually interacting with them. It's interacting with how they've been grown. It's the protective measures by which they all have, and they're unique in each species. And then how they were grown. Were they wild? Were they cultivated? Are they mass produced, or is it small farmers? And knowing the energy of where your food comes from is massive, because that energy is part of what we take in when we digest. So I would say, as much as what we eat, as crowding out things that we actually shouldn't be eating. And that's anything that's chemically altered, chemically flavored, artificially flavored, sugar, any kind of toxin, including alcohol. I mean, as you get older, there are certain genes, certain women who say they can't tolerate alcohol. And part of that's the load on the liver. But part of that is just, the epigenetics of, we can't actually, cleanse the body of that neurotoxin. So that's another thing I would recommend. And then something else is like really prioritizing sleep. And it's not just getting 7 hours, it's actually the 7 hours you get, or the 8 hours. And it's the consistency of good sleep. So from an Eastern perspective, because what I love to do is combine the East with the West. The West says get 7 hours minimum. And it kind of doesn't, doctors and the literature doesn't say to go to sleep early. But the organs that rest between 10 and midnight, 10 p.m. and midnight, are the organs that actually need the deepest amount of rest. And our deep sleep cycle is the first sleep cycle. So if we get to sleep earlier, we're actually nourishing the entirety of our endocrine system. And by God means, I don't want to bore everybody with the science, but it's like, when we understand why we're being told to go to bed closer to 10 instead of, scrolling on our phones and binging on that one very last episode, which, I mean, I'm completely guilty of myself. But when we actually know how to support the body on the most profound level, it gives back to us tenfold, right? So those would be the main things. And then, of course, supplementation and, living out your truth, your life's purpose. I mean, I say it as though it's like just this mere thing that we need to all be doing.
I so feel you. And just from my own journey, I've had to can't tolerate alcohol at all. Really spent the first sort of in my 20s and 30s partying, right? And now it's like, can't even have one drink. Caffeine also really affects me. Like, it's just this shedding, right? Mm-hmm. Of what you're serving, and the sleep is just everything, right? Yeah. Like, if I don't go to bed at like 9:30, 10, I'm then actually just awake, right? And then, I shift into a totally different space and I'm just wide awake. So I totally know that. I think your body tells you.
Yes.
Your body's telling you, go to bed early, like stop drinking the coffee, whatever it is, right? And we don't listen to our body, right? Because, we're not really taught that. And so I think being really mindful of all of these things. And in your chapter, you talk about what to eat when. Yeah. When you're bleeding, eat dark, leafy greens and blueberries.
Yes.
And understand when you're ovulating, right? Like, just understanding that. And again, it's really important because we're so disconnected from our body.
We are.
And then
we can be.
Yeah, we can be. And I think it's a process of, like, what I've discovered, and from the women I hang out with, who are all open and aware and are really in tune with their cycle. And it's really empowering. And there's no negativity around it.
Mm-mm. No apologizing, no feeling like we have to hide it. Yeah. Just fully standing in our power. Definitely. And that process as we age is absolutely essential. And then the connection to the moon, of course, which we haven't mentioned, as our cycles begin to become more erratic, the more we connect with the moon, the more we understand not only our energy systems, but our moods, the better time to reach out and do something big, and then the time to sort of wane and sort of come back and connect back in internally. So yeah, that's a beautiful aspect.
Yeah, so in tune now. So, as we age, I think we become wiser as well. And so we are a little more open, like, to notice what's happening. So tell us about your masterclass.
I'm so excited for my masterclass. I've never actually done this masterclass. So anyone who's ever worked with me before, I just want you to know this is new. And so in this masterclass, I'm going to bring you the best and the most basic. So these are going to be the things you can get your hands on that have the greatest effect. And yet I'm going to explain to you why. And then I'm going to lay out a couple of ideas for snack foods, because I think a lot of women know what to eat in the meal situation, because I run entire programs on that. But I think women don't quite understand that you can pack a lot of nutrition into snacks. So if you're one of those women who, like us, we have multiple children, we're running around, we're doing all the things, we're the glue, right? If you understand how to support your body and you just, you come to life prepared, like anything, of course, you can actually, like I said, support the nervous system and really bring in those phytoestrogens and phytosterols and all the herbs in really easy ways. So this masterclass is going to be like a 90-minute experience. It's, down and dirty. Let's do it. Let's get the information and then get out. So that's offer number one. And then the bigger offer for the woman who's like, okay, I need all this, is hormone mastery. And hormone mastery is going to be a 3-month, possibly even 4 months. I tend to like to elongate my programs because we're never done. I'm never done working with the group. The most profound women come into my life. I'm so blessed. And so this group is going to be, we're going to start at the foundation. We're going to start with food and we're going to go deep. And then we're going to move into the various classifications of herbs and how to support the body, not only in your early 40s, but in your late 40s and then 50s and beyond. And then we're going to go into the mindset and utilize the chakras. I think understanding the symptoms and knowing how to move the energy through the chakras, as I talked about the Kundalini, is super, super. It's integral to this process, moving through this portal, because if that energy gets stuck and stagnant, then it creates dis-ease in the body, and we don't want that. We don't want that at all. It's an inflammatory time in the best of times, right? Charles says it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. But in the worst of times, it's a mildly inflammatory state, and at the worst of times, it's not only inflammatory, but it's lonely, and we're mourning the death of something at the same time as trying to get excited about something that really doesn't actually in our culture look or feel or is appreciated to be something beautiful. And that's the aging process. And when we learn to age collectively as a collective divine feminine group of women, I mean, our ripple effect is unbelievable, and our magnetism is off the charts. And I am all about the magnetism. Anybody who's been following me for 5 minutes knows that word rolls off my tongue like no other word. I mean, that and plant kingdom, but other than that, so that's what's coming up. So that's coming up late January, and I'm starting launching that in a couple of weeks. So I'm super excited about hormone mastery. And it's going to be a small group. It's a group of 10. So whereas the master class is, I can do master class with hundreds.
Yeah. That sounds so great. I'm all about the magnetism too. And just some comments on Facebook that, you're every middle-aged woman's best resource. Amazing feedback about your program, so much information, so much knowledge. And, I really believe, women really, it's a time for us to come together and support each other. Yeah. And this is so important in a woman's health, because we know that if we don't address the physical, the emotion gets stuck, and then we get the physical manifestation, which is wellness to illness. Like, this is so important.
Yeah, it's the real deal.
It's the real deal for sure. Yeah, it's not it's not to be just pushed away, right?
No.
So Michelle, thank you for your wisdom, your knowledge. You know, go join the masterclass, go stalk you. And you also have an amazing skincare range. I'm like,
yes.
What does this woman do? Like, I've been totally stalking you, and you just look so good.
Thank you. Beautiful.
I'm like, wow, you look so good. So thank you so much. I'm sure everyone who's listening now or was watching the replay is just kind of like, oh my God, totally going to stalk you. But this has been such a joyful 30 minutes. I'm so happy to have connected across the,
I know,
the continents, Australia and America. So I love. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leonie. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.